Thank you, everyone. What good conversations today. And Stephen has a really interesting question that came up that you'd like to talk about.
Well, we've got a number of people this week asked us about all the genomic testing that is being advertised on social media. There's a number of different laboratories that are announcing epigenetic testing, and you should sign up for epigenetic testing with this company or that company, and this company has, 100 biomarkers, and this company has 150 biomarkers that they're analyzing, and perhaps there's even more than 150
And now you're going to
biomarkers.
explain what epigenetic means, right?
Oh, yes. So,
Okay.
so So we all have a genome, and your genome is basically the genetic package that you inherited from your father and your mother.
Lots of DNA.
Lots of DNA, and that combination of genetic material from your father and your mother became your genome. That is your unique genetic package that then controls every aspect of your life, basically. But that's your genome. And those genes don't change. But the expression of those genes do change, and they change a lot depending on your environment, depending on your age, depending on how much you exercise, depending on what you eat, depending on your state of mind, depending on how you sleep, depending on,
Depending on who's in your gut.
yes. So all of these factors change the way that think of your genes as a dimmer switch. Every gene in your cell is a dimmer switch. It can be on, off, or anything in between, right? So the in between, those that's the gene expression. So this dimmer switch can be on or off. Now keep in mind that most of the genes in your genome are off right now. Right? Most of your genes, right, are in the off position. And they are placed in the on position on specific requirements of that cell. But those genes don't change. It's the expression of the gene. It's that dimmer switch that gets turned up or gets turned down. So these are called epigenetic changes. So now, since we can sequence genes in the human genome, we can sequence those. We can look at the gene expression of each gene. Imagine when I was back doing this work, yeah, 20 years ago, we could maybe analyze the genes of I don't know, maybe a handful of genes in a human being. And now, literally, there's technologies that you can look at the entire human genome. Not amazing. It's just astounding. So, are we on the threshold of a real breakthrough in information that was going to be available to us? The question is, number one, uh, uh, are the populations that are being studied, are those populations big enough to make confident predictions? In other words, when you pay money for one of these epigenetic studies, have they analyzed enough people, right? Is the database big enough for them to make really confident statements that if you make this change in your behavior, your diet, or your supplements, it will result in this benefit? I'm thinking it's a little too early. Why? Because when I look at these companies making these statements and I ask them for their data set, there's usually a couple of thousand subjects that they studied. Now, I'm not going to give them any money until they've got a couple of million. Personally, I'm not going to do that. Now, what I want you to understand is that, so I'm saying that it's a little bit too early to be putting a lot of emphasis on these epigenetic studies. Where does Zinzino fit in? Which is what the question's coming down to. Is Zinzino working on epigenetic analysis? And the answer is no. Zinzino took a different approach, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. Write this down. Because if anybody asks you about this epigenetic flurry of companies and tests that are out there, you're going to want to have a response. And here it is. If there are hundreds of biomarkers, and there are at least hundreds, there may be even thousands of biomarkers, where do you put your money? Where do you put your attention? Because there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only a certain amount of money that we have at our disposal. What Zinzino said was, of all these biomarkers, and Zinzino was aware of the biomarkers, but of all these biomarkers, what are the most important ones, right? That we can not only accurately test, but more importantly, that we can actually affect in a beneficial way. What are the most, of all these thousands of biomarkers, right, that are going to be analyzed with genomic testing, what are the tests, what are the biomarkers that we can accurately test and that we can accurately give you information regarding how to improve that value? That's what Zinzino said was, well, guess what? I would list number one being the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. I would say that is, in my book, the most important biomarker that you can take a test tomorrow, understand the results of that test, and take steps to improve that biomarker. Is there another one that I would put my money on? Yeah, how about a test that would measure the integrity of your barrier mechanism in your gut? A test that would give you the ability to measure your intestinal integrity and then give you products that reliably have been shown to improve that biomarker. Yeah. So Zinzino basically said, of all these thousands of biomarkers, we know that there's one, which is really, really number one, which is omega-6 to omega-3. And we know that there's another one. And guess what? We've got that handled too. So to me, Zinzino has put themselves at the head of the parade, right? With this understanding of really where to put your money, your time, and your attention. And maybe ultimately all those other genomic factors will be revealed with large population studies. But right now, there's two studies that I'll put my money on any day of the week. Omega-6 to omega-3, right? Proven way to improve that value. And number two, intestinal integrity, which is the barrier mechanism of your gut, which has a tremendous effect on your overall health.
For sure. And the whole epigenetic thing, well, let's go back to the cell membranes. The nuclear membrane, what is its composition?
Yeah.
What is the cellular membrane, the mitochondrial membrane? So whatever that cell needs to be able to do its work optimally goes back to what is your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio? What is your omega-3 index percent?
Yeah.
So, yeah.